Somehow 4 o'clock has just sneaked up on us and come like a stranger in the dark of night. Good evening. Good afternoon, I should say. It's 4 o'clock on Monday, December 20th, 2021. And I officially open this meeting of the Conway City Council to carry on the business of the city. If you'd please join me for an invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the birth of your son, the reason for our being in this festive mood and the celebration of Christmas. We ask that you be present with us as we undertake the business of the city, keeping self and friends way back in the foreground and keeping the common interest of the citizens of this municipality at heart. Please bless every household that's represented here and bless everyone with a wonderful holiday season. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. What's the will of the council? Mr. Goldfinch, or was that not a?
Mayor, I move this time we approve consent agenda.
Ms. Timms?
I second the motion.
We have a properly seconded motion to approve the agenda. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now for the
Point of clarification, that was a motion to approve the agenda, not the consent agenda.
That's exactly.
Okay.
All right, wonderful. Now, do you also move to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Hyman?
I would second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
We have a properly seconded motion to also approve the consent agenda. All in favor with a show of hands, please. That also is carried unanimously. Moving forward, we're now at item 4, public input. I've been made aware that there are 2 people who have signed up in advance to speak during public input. I'll just mention at this point that public input is an opportunity for anyone to approach this council with any business that is of the city. The single exception would be any conversation about an individual employee. That, of course, would need to be taken up in a more private venue. There's a time limit, which is 5 minutes. You will be able to monitor yourself as I monitor you for that 5-minute period. I typically don't cut people off in the middle of a sentence. You know, we're not that crazy, but I won't give you 6 minutes either. And finally, public input is not interactive. Every once in a while, there's such a quick answer that I might respond or refer you to one of our employees to get their card, but that's kind of how that goes. All right, first we have Mr. Trapper Fowler, who is here to speak. Welcome, Mr. Fowler. If you begin, please, 2 things. If you'd begin with your name and address, please. But secondly, if you'd please speak directly into the mic. People in the rear have difficulty hearing.
Sure. So Trapper Fowler, 5075 Adrian Highway, Conway. I appreciate you council members for the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of the Coastal Conservation League and as a local, born and raised here. We oppose the exemption request regarding the Wild Wing Plan development from the Tree Protection Ordinance. We believe this risks setting a precedent for other developments to request the same exemption from the tree protections. While there may be work to be done to improve the existing tree ordinance, a blanket exemption is not the answer. In addition, I'd like to recognize the following concerns. The public spoke out about flooding on the existing site. You saw the pictures. According to the Department of Ag, a typical 100-foot tree has about 200,000 leaves on it. In a single growing season, that tree can absorb 11,000 gallons of water. We suggest this developer work with the natural resources on site to develop the site appropriately and with hydrology concerns in mind. There hasn't even been a formal wetland survey for this site. How can you make the best decision without one? Cutting trees does impact hydrology. We know that. Our natural infrastructure can be our best defense for flooding issues. We acknowledge this is not a matter of if the site will be developed, but when and how. Number two, this developer did not seek to appeal the fees through the Conway Tree Board as allowed under the existing ordinance. Instead, he chose to circumvent the proper channels for reasonable exemption request. This developer would be rewarded if this exemption is approved tonight and open the door for others who don't wish to follow the tree ordinance or any other city ordinance for that matter. This developer prompted a bill in our state house that would ban tree ordinances statewide. That's a scary thought. In many ways, your decision tonight impacts the state of South Carolina, not just Conway. It also shows that some individuals don't have to follow the same rules as the rest of us. Finally, I would like to read the introduction section for the existing tree ordinance because this exemption, if made, also nullifies a part of Conway's history. The preservation of trees and natural vegetation is deeply rooted in the history of Conway and is a critical public concern. Few communities can actually boast that they build streets around trees, as Conway does. Few communities attach names and historical significance to particular trees, as Conway does. Local legend has it that when large oaks along Main Street were threatened by the construction of the railroad in 1887, Miss Mary Beatty, who lived near the Wade Hampton Oak, appeared with a loaded shotgun and demanded that the construction workers touch not a single branch. The actions of Mary Beatty have inspired the citizens of Conway to actively protect the live oak trees as well as certain other native tree species. It is felt that Miss Beatty's actions that day were the genesis of the tree protection not only in Conway but in the state of South Carolina. The last part I want to emphasize, not only in Conway but in the state of South Carolina. We understand that the argument is that this is the last PD in the city. But how are you going to explain to the next developer or homeowner that this was warranted in this case but not in the next? We suggest you clarify this in writing and on record here tonight if this is the case. We know you council members tonight will make the best decision based on city staff, planning commission recommendations. These are the experts in the room with the residents of this community in mind and to protect our prized natural resources in the city, which are the trees. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Also with us this evening is Miss Sadie Thomas. And if you would also begin with your name and address, please.
Sudie Thomas, 2513 Graham Road in Conway. And I'm here to speak on the same issue, the requested exemption for this Wild Wing development. And I'm here also to ask that you please do not approve. The exemption sets a precedent for future development projects to request and expect approval of the same exemption from the strong City of Conway tree protections. I gather that due to the changes in the development plan, there were many trees in the way that most of council thinks that the exemption is warranted, but certainly this developer knew he had to follow current ordinances no matter when he bought the land or made the plans. Old and new tree protection ordinance. The old and new tree protection ordinance should apply. The 2007 tree ordinance update was adopted with the caveat that existing developments with site-specific approval already in place did not have to be subject to the requirements of the new ordinance, but this project did not have an approved site plan at the time. As Trapper said, the request was not pursued and presented through the correct process through the tree board. Even though the planning staff had already begun working with them to lessen the mitigation costs. So why not let this project keep going through the official process where the planning staff were already working with them on compromises? If this is approved, council should expect more developers to try and circumvent the official process for exceptions to this tree protection ordinance and then open the door for them to ask for exemptions to other ordinances as they see an incorrect process working. The City of Conway Planning Commission disapproved, and the city planning staff recommends disapproval to this exemptions. Concerns cited were that they didn't use the correct process and that the appropriateness of removing the property from the tree protection before having knowledge about possible wetlands on site. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended denial of this request. From what I have seen, there hasn't been a wetland delineation. Information from the National Wetlands Inventory and the Webster Survey show that there likely exists extensive wetlands on site. There's lots of hydric soil areas. Planning staff had recommended if there are wetlands, approving the removal of trees prior to obtaining a final determination of wetlands is not advisable. Should that information be determined and provided prior to considering this type of exemption? Many of the trees in question are typically associated with wetlands, including cypress. Perhaps some of the site should not be developed due to this. Cypress is a wetland obligate species and naturally found only in wetlands. An updated tree survey for the site would be helpful. The city of Conway is a tree city, as Trapper said, and held up and as an example for other cities to follow. A recent publication by the South Carolina Forestry Commission called the Urban Planners Toolkit, which I sent you all, I think I sent y'all an attachment with that. It's a really good document. It uses the city of Conway as a case study and mentions our tree protection ordinance as a good example 19 times. Will this jeopardize 35 years of Tree City USA certification for Conway? Fast tracking this very excessive precedent as well. Please disapprove or defer this until the next official city council meeting after wetland information is submitted. Maybe more details about what they want to cut and what will not be cut would help garner more support. I can imagine some of the new neighborhood roads will be named for the trees that are cut due to the tree protection ordinance not being followed. And we really need the ecosystem services that even some of these trees can provide. And I appreciate y'all listening to me tonight.
Thank you so much. We'll entertain a motion. Is there anyone else who would like to participate in public input? Anyone? There being no, yes, sir, Mr. Jordan. Please come forward. If you do the same, begin with your name and address. And speak into the mic.
I'm Jimmy Jordan. I'd just like, for the record, I've heard 3 times that there are wetlands on the property in question, and that's not true. We have a wetlands letter. There is 0.05 acres of wetlands on the property. That's about the size of a good sized bedroom. So there are no wetlands on the property. We have a certified letter from the Corps of Engineers on 42 acres. The 7 acres that we had last year that we did a tree ordinance on had no wetlands on that. And so there are wetland species trees that have been on there for 100 years, but there are no wetlands on the property. So that argument is not valid. The trees that are on the property are hardwoods, and they are in such areas that we'll have to grade the property. There's no way we can develop that property without grading the property. You can't develop a piece of property like that without filling it and raising the property. We've got a 25-foot buffer around the property, which takes up about 17% of the property already. So we're losing 17% of the property that can't be touched. And that's the reason that we asked for the exemption. So we'd be losing probably 25 to 30% of the property or more if we have to work around the trees that are in question. And we've discussed all that previously, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
I said, thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? There being none, we'll entertain a motion. I move that we close public input at this time. Is there a second? Mr. Hyman?
I would second the motion.
Properly seconded motion to close public input. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Moving forward to item 6, final reading. Final reading of ordinance ZA 2021-1220 to exempt specific properties from application of Title III Public Works Chapter 4, Tree Preservation in the Code of Ordinances for the City of Conway, South Carolina. 38300000321, 38300000337, 38313020070, 38313020072, and 38416010030. Ms. Harden.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor. The presentation slides are the same as we heard at the first reading. To provide the background timeline, Wild Wing Plan Development was adopted in 2000. States for all development within the PD shall be in accordance with the current City of Conway land development regulations at the time of permit approval. And that was the land development regulations as the zoning code and the subdivision regulations, as well as the tree protection ordinance. The tree protection ordinance was updated in 2007, and in 2011, Conway combined land development regs with the zoning ordinance into a unified development ordinance. In 2019, there was amendment to the properties, or at least one of the properties on the screen, showing that would allow institutional uses on select tracts, and institutional uses include things like assisted living facilities, which has been discussed for one of the properties in previous meetings. The buffer exhibit that Mr. Jordan had referred to is shown on the screen from the 2018 files. It shows a 25-foot buffer around the perimeter of the property with the additional buffering coming off the back of Spoonbill, I believe it's called Spoonbill Court, off of Wild Wing Lakes. The wetlands inventory for the National U.S. Fish and Wildlife Survey is shown on the screen. That was the source of information where we were not sure whether we had wetlands on the site or not, because the U.S. Wildlife Inventory had potential soils and potential wetland issues on that area. Because a lot of the information that we're running on is from 2018 and has not been updated since, we were not quite sure whether that had changed. And so that was the basis for the Planning Commission denial based on that, plus the skipping the Tree Protection Board hearing. And staff did and does recommend denial.
Thank you, ma'am. What is the will of the council? Mr. Hubbard. Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Ms. Timms. We have a properly seconded motion to move forward with the approval of the matter before us. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things I'd like to point out for people's education and clarity. I got several phone calls today from folks that are concerned, and when there's change, anything changes beside you get concerned. And so it's worth noting, and I hope that I don't see the news media here today, but if you're watching or listening, that when you run the story, I hope that you'll run the entire story, because there's a lot to this story. It's not just a regular project that you come across, but the main thing that keeps coming back that I keep hearing, and I understand some of my colleagues are the same boat, is that they fear that by doing this sets a precedent. And I can only speak for myself, but this is not setting a precedent. This is a very, very, very unique situation. Not one that we've ever dealt with in the 12 years that I've served on council. And so if you're a developer thinking that you're going to get in line next because we did this, don't call me, because this is not setting a precedent. At least I'm speaking for myself. I'll be very clear on that.
All right, sir. Is there anyone else?
Mayor,
Mr. Hyman?
I
Yes.
would kind of echo Mr. Goldfinch's thoughts on this. This is a little different in that it was all of that property was originally county, well, like most property, but when it was originally developed, it was county. It was brought into the city when we annexed it, which was also around the same time that the PD was formed. I mean, this is a unique situation in that, as far as I know, it is the only PD that this applies to. I mean, the only one. that is still undeveloped that was done prior to the UDO. I just think it's a unique situation and by no means sets precedence. I'm with William. Don't call me. I mean, if you think that that's what's going to happen with any other developer, because the only reason I support this is I feel like it falls into a small hole that was somewhat created by the city and the prior people who set up the PD. But that's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? I could belabor the point. Mr. Jordan, I assure you that it is not your name, it is not your company that gives me angst. I just feel very strongly in the same way as Mr. Fowler and Mr. Thomas so well spoke just minutes before that. Those are the reasons I can't support it. Don't wish you any harm, wish you well, but I cannot support it for those reasons. I will now call the vote. All in favor, if you would please show your hands. 5. I never mentioned that Mr. White is not present. He's out for personal reasons, I suppose. Other than myself, the other 5 members of the council have voted in the positive. And anyone against would be simply me alone, just I. And that is the count. The motion carries with the majority of the council. We have adjournment next, but if I might just have a little council input. I was going to ask I will ask the administrator to please set up a time and date convenient for the council to have a workshop regarding the Whittemore Elementary School property. If we could schedule it, I'd like to see us give up to maybe 2 hours to this venture. And because our city council meetings tend to be relatively lengthy, that we maybe set this apart on an additional day workshop in our council chambers with all council there. Perhaps having just an overview, some questions and answers. And I just think that some progress has been made. Mr. Goldfinch has, and I have had, maybe some others of you have had communications with some of the leadership of the Historic Race Path and Whittemore Society. And pardon me, I didn't check the name of the group recently, but just so that we can begin to make some plans in that vein, please. I'll also say, before I give it to Mr. Hyman, that today's the 20th of December. It is Christmas. And I wish everyone, either present or viewing, to please have a safe and wonderful and special and memorable Christmas with you and your families. God bless you. Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I was just going to ask if maybe we could not have that the week of January the 10th. I'm pretty much available any other time, but the 10th, I'm going to be in a pretty lengthy trial.
Thank you for making that known. And if anybody has any obvious conflicts, I mean, I'm sure we can work around them. We certainly want everybody to participate. Anyone else want to give any last minute input before we adjourn?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yes, sir. Mr.
Thank you to both Shane and Jean for your service. Thank you.
I purposefully didn't mention it, but now that you did. And with all that said, I will officially, we'll need a motion to adjourn. Let's go ahead. Mr. Hubbard? Wait, there goes this a second. All in favor with show of hands, please. Peace out. All right, we are adjourned. God bless you all.